Good morning, I'm Councilwoman Roney, and I'm filling in for Vice Mayor Kilgore as Chair of the Boards and Commissions Committee today. I'd like to welcome you to the March 14th, 2023 remote meeting. All council committee members and staff are participating virtually. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We're streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone. For those of you joining us today, welcome. For today's meeting, we'll have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 9478. Your phone will be muted and you'll hear the meeting live. At this point, speakers will need to push star 3 to enter the speaker queue. Once again, that number is 855-925-2801, meeting code 9478. And you will need to press star 3 to enter the speaker queue. I'll now go through and introduce all the committee members and staff who are participating virtually. Council and staff, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Good morning.
Assistant City Manager Ben Woody.
Good morning.
Deputy City Clerk Sarah Gross.
Good morning.
Assistant City Clerk Jerry Goldberg.
Good morning.
It has on my script here that we might see City Clerk Maggie Burleson. And I do not find that the case. So good morning to everyone. And next up, we will go to the agenda, where we'll start with approval of the February 14th, 2023 minutes. Can I get a motion to approve?
I move that the minutes be approved as presented.
I'll second. So for a roll call vote, Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Aye.
And myself, aye. Passes unanimously. Next up, we have new business, the March board appointments, where I'll pass off to, says Jerry here.
And if I could just interrupt, there's no public comment in the queue.
Oh, thank you. It is tricky going back and forth between the script. I appreciate those who are doing it typically.
So first up for appointments, we do have the Asheville Area Riverfront Redevelopment Commission. There is one vacancy and it must be a business or property owner within the Riverfront District. The chair and the vice chair recommend the appointment of Joseph Hackett.
Do we have a motion to make a recommendation?
Yes, Councilwoman Roney, I recommend the appointment of Joseph Hackett.
And I second. Do we have any comments? Okay, I'll go for the roll call vote then. Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Aye.
And myself, aye. The motion passes unanimously for recommendation of Joseph Hackett. Next, we go to the Audit Committee. There are two vacancies.
I'll go ahead and point out, I'm unable to open my link that has the names and I don't have a recommendation on mine, so I'm happy to defer to you, Kim.
For the Audit Committee, based on what I'm seeing here, do we have openings? Jerry, can you speak to that? Or not openings, but applicants.
We have one applicant, Debbie Ivanchik, and I apologize if I am not pronouncing that correctly. Debbie is a retired CPA, which is eligible for a CPA seat. Both seats that are open right now, both vacancies must be CPAs. A retired CPA is eligible. I do point out, though, that she also does not live within the city, but again, that is up to your discretion.
I know we have had some difficulty filling the audit seats, so yes. I'm happy to make a motion to recommend Debbie Ivanchik.
I'll second.
Moving to the roll call vote, Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Aye.
And myself, aye. Next, we go to the Downtown Commission.
We have two vacancies currently. And the chair of the Downtown Commission recommends the appointment of Nur Edwards and Eva Michelle Spicer.
I move to accept the chair's recommendations of Nora Edwards and Eva Michelle Spicer.
Thank you. I had a couple questions about this one. So I see that we're losing some experience, specifically Guillermo and Kimberly Hunter. And I know both of the recommendations for Nur and Eva Michelle, they both have a lot of experience running business downtown. There is some business experience and representative on the commission already, but after reading all of the applications, I noticed that Bill Cooney's application has extensive planning, infrastructure cost assessment, public engagement experience that seems to be meeting some of the skill loss of previous and current appointees. So I wonder, I'm not prepared to second the appointment of both of the business owners, but I do think it would be appropriate to recommend one to the council and maybe have a deeper council conversation. Is it possible you might consider making a motion for one?
I'm inclined to lean into the chair's recommendation. So if you want to hold off for both until the vice mayor returns, I'm happy to do that. So as of today, I am only at this time ready to vote for both as recommended by the chair.
Okay, since we don't have a second and that motion will have failed, I will make a motion to recommend Nur Edwards to the city council so that we can at least have one recommendation.
I'll go ahead and defer until the vice mayor returns.
Okay, then since we don't have a motion that is going to get across with a vote for today, we can defer to the full council for this discussion. So we'll move on to the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee.
So the Homeless Initiative has one vacancy, and at this time, the staff liaison is recommending no new appointments while the board is still working on its transition plan. That was after the meeting regarding the continuum of care. So that is their recommendation.
Thank you, Jerry. We do have work groups making reports to the HIAC that are meeting. Some of them are meeting weekly. So I know there's a great deal of work going into that effort. The Multimodal Transportation Commission is next.
Just point of clarification. So no further advertisement or anything, just holding? Is that what
Well, that's a good question, Jerry. I think I would be inclined to keep the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee open, because if there are recommendations that come from HIAC, we'd like to, I imagine, have that door open instead of closed.
Okay, thank you.
Antoinette, do you have any thoughts on that?
I agree.
Okay. So Multimodal Transportation Commission, the vacancy is for the bike ped interest, and the commission recommends the appointment in ranked order of Elise Martyr, Shelley McKechnie, Abigail Griffin, Lance Ball, or Tom Hunter.
I understand this is for the bike and pedestrian interest, and Elise does serve on the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, but had asked that the multimodal be their top priority. And so I did circle around with Elise, as well as I've heard that they might have heard from staff as well, and understand that Elise would like to join as a second neighborhood liaison, essentially, though it would be for the voting seat. So Elizabeth Likeswar will stay on as the non-voting member of NAC, and Elise would join as the voting member in the bike pedestrian interest. In that case, do we have a motion at this time?
So I move to recommend Elise Martyr as indicated by the commission.
Second, and then we'll go to the roll call vote. Antoinette Mosley.
Aye.
And Kim Roney, aye. So that passes unanimously. And that concludes our appointments. We're moving to unfinished business.
All right, we have a brief presentation to make regarding the quarterly appointments proposal. So I'm going to begin sharing my screen now. One moment.
And thank you, Sarah. I am going to start us off on this presentation. And what we will be looking for upon completion of the presentation is a vote of support from this council committee. All right, Sarah, if you can go ahead and hit the first slide. So what we are proposing is to move from the current monthly appointments process to doing appointments 4 to 5 times a year. I would like to also offer up that before we present this, we did go to the DE&I office for an equity assessment. They did not have concerns and, in fact, indicated support for the change. Some of the perceived benefits and outcomes that we expect from the administrative standpoint, it will be more efficient in terms of our staff time. It will also, though, build more time in for board chairs, staff, and council to actually review applications, thereby enabling them to make more thoughtful recommendations and appointments. With the extra time that we expect built in, the months when we're not doing the appointments, we plan to bring extra regular scheduled trainings and expand our outreach efforts. Next slide, please. So the monthly schedule as it is right now, as we've noted many times in the past, is pretty staff time intensive. It doesn't allow for really robust or diverse or targeted outreach either. In addition, the quick turnaround limits the input from board chairs, members, and liaisons. Typically, the process allows a 1-week turnaround from the application deadline to council consideration of appointment. And in that time, we have to process all the applications, get them out to the board's chair and council, and then request their recommendations to come in. So it's a really squished time frame, as I like to say it, and it really limits the time to review and to vet applicants. And also, it limits the applicant's ability to perhaps participate and engage in meetings prior to their applying. So this would allow more for that. Next slide. As it currently stands, we would plan, and the time schedule is tentative and it's built to be flexible, but we would schedule appointments 4 times a year: January, April, June, and October. Planning and Zoning Commission and the Buncombe County Tourism Development Authority would remain separate and with their appointments in August. And that is because those appointments usually require essays and or interviews. So it's a more robust appointment process. And as noted previously, in the off months, we would provide regularly scheduled trainings for new and prospective board members, for board chairs, for staff liaisons, and we can conduct more robust outreach. We can actually target and see who's missing from the table, what boards perhaps don't have the expertise, the diverse representation that we might want to have on certain boards, and then we can try and target our outreach efforts to recruit those applicants to the process. Next slide. So the current proposal, this slide here demonstrates the additional time that would be built in for advertising and for the review, recommendations, outreach period. So as you can see, currently we have approximately 19 days, and it ranges from 15 to 20, but in this instance, 19 days from when we advertise to the deadline of the applications. We get the applications, the deadline hits, and we get 2 days to send it out to the chair and council. Recommendations are due 2 days later. Final materials and everything else then follows. So as you can see, it's a very short time frame. With a proposed start, what we would have is a minimum, really, the first one is only 47 days, but as we go to the next cycle, the summer cycle, or actually it would be the fall cycle, it's actually building it into more than 60 days. the turnaround from what we do then with the applications still would only be 2 or 3 days because we don't need a whole lot of time for that. But here's where the difference comes in. The recommendations would be due 32 days, enabling most commissions and boards to have a meeting within that period, that 1 month's time frame for those that meet monthly. And for those that don't meet monthly, it allows more time to get out however the board chair decides to do their recommendations. So a lot more time is built in there. Expanded outreach. With a 2-month advertising time, we most definitely would hit most monthly deadlines for any media that might come. And at this point, we don't have a paid media schedule, but that's not to say that may not come down the line. But we would hit media deadlines to at least get in 1 month of whether it's radio or print. It'll also allow us to work with CAPE on testing and trying other language tools that they are working on right now. So that'll allow us to bring more diverse representation again to our boards and commissions. Some of the organizations, print and radio, I'm not going to go on to. They're there, but by targeting by really looking at who is present and on our current boards and commissions, we can then see really who is not present, who is missing from those conversations. And then we can target the outreach where we think we can get them. And we can, and Sarah will touch on this in a little bit, look at whether we're hitting that, whether we're getting the applicants that we hope to. So Sarah, I'll turn it over to Sarah now.
Yeah. And one of the other benefits that we would hope to bring to the table with this revised appointment schedule would be regular training opportunities with the hope of creating a cohort of sorts of new members and offer training after the month of appointments, again, to create that cohort. Tentatively, we'd be looking at February, July, and November to have trainings. I highlighted July here because that could possibly be the first big training that we'll offer, maybe a pilot before just to test what it looks like. But this would be more or less an orientation for new members. And then we hope to explore what a specific training for chairs could also look like. We're already working hand in hand with Equity and Inclusion Department staff to offer, to have that Equity 101, kind of like an overview in this orientation as well. All right, so that's the proposal in a nutshell. What this could look like as far as the proposed timeline. As you may recall at the February meeting, this was first introduced. We've been connecting with board chairs and staff to make sure they're aware of this proposal. And today we are asking this committee to vote of support, noting again that this does not need to go to full council. And if it were to be supported today and following the March-April session, we would send out the vacancy flyer tomorrow after the appointments are made tonight, which would include April and our summer cycle vacancies. April would look the same while we transition, so we don't want to catch anyone off guard. So we would still make appointments regularly for April, but we'd also be already advertising for the June appointments. So that would be our first quarterly one, and come back to make those appointments in June on June 13th. So we can see what that looks like. So measuring impact. In a year or so after the 4 cycles, we hope to come back and kind of measure what the applications look like, what the trainings look like, how many people attended, and really get some feedback about how this felt, how this is working. So in a year, we hope to come back and just kind of weigh and have the discussion. Is this something we want to do permanently, or where can we make changes? All right, so the key takeaways, the clerk's office is proposing to change the appointment cycle, again, for efficiency, to expand on our outreach efforts, and to also offer some regular trainings for boards and commission members. That's it for our presentation. Any questions?
Thank you, Sarah and Jerry. I had a couple thoughts. Internet, do you want to weigh in here? Okay. First of all, it does seem like through the restructure or realignment of our boards and commissions, we are listening to what some of the feedback is coming up and like how we could support our boards and commissions, our advisory boards, volunteers more fully in doing this important work. So I want to say thank you for that. I appreciate the return to Equity 101 training. I was able to participate in that as an advisory board volunteer. Also, I really appreciate that you're hearing part of that outreach part that we've worked on for a couple years. I know I looked at the Urban News deadline, and their deadline is last Friday of each month for publication. There is more time needed for translation. So when we're considering Ola Carolina, La Noticia, and JM Pro, it will just create more of a window for that too. So thank you for making that effort and naming that work. I am curious if it's going to change our regular meetings for this group. Do you know if there's a plan to maybe look at to make more staff time to get that work done? We would potentially have fewer meetings of this body.
I think that's a great possibility. I would recommend that we hold this time and for the time being, just to see if anything comes up as far as emergency appointments and or board needs changes. But we would cancel if there is no agenda items. So maybe, yeah. So we would we'd cancel well in advance if we knew that there was no agenda items.
Okay, I was operating under the assumption that quarterly appointments meant quarterly meetings, but that's not a given. That's not included in what we're discussing today.
That's maybe how it falls. I just wanted to keep the opportunity if there was a board were to change their ordinance, that there is the avenue to come to boards and commissions committee. That, as we know, is rare. But to have that opportunity, but it would likely fall that we only meet for appointments.
So like a transition period just to kind of check it out.
Yeah, before we change the regular meeting schedule.
Right. I did notice there are a couple that we have state mandates. So if there's an opening, there's like a 60-day window that it has to be filled, for example.
Exactly. And we're hoping that the longer time frame, we'd get more applications and be able to make the appointments on time. But we did want to, keep that cushion in case we had to make an urgent appointment.
I know we're getting some feedback around concern about the equity and inclusion and the demographics of who's able to have a seat at the table. I know through the realignment, we're looking at what some of those barriers to participation are. For example, if we have meetings in the morning, there may be the built-in childcare of having children at school. But if we move things into the evening, we don't have as much affordable childcare opportunities. So that's creating a barrier for some folks to participate in evening meetings, and especially late afternoon, right, as kids are getting out of school. So I know that we still have a ways to go. I do think when it comes to making that intentional effort around outreach, this is a step in the right direction. So I'm prepared to report or to support it. Antoinette, might we hear a motion?
I move to support the recommended quarterly appointments proposal.
Second. And just affirming for anyone who's following this conversation that this decision would go through the Boards and Commissions Committee. Vice Mayor Kilgore isn't here today, but I am prepared to take the roll call vote so we can move forward with this new effort. So Antoinette Mosley?
Aye.
Kim Roney, aye. So it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Next, we have informal discussion or updates.
None from the clerk's office at this time.
And hearing none, we'll move to public comments, which can be made for up to half an hour.
We do not have any callers in the queue right now.
And I'll just say thanks to those who've been emailing in comment, because that is also part of the public record and it is engagement that's appreciated. And with that, we shall adjourn.
Thanks,
Thank you.